Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, on the radio, on Facebook Live, on podcasts, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com. If you miss an episode and you want to watch or listen, you can find all of our episodes online. And I'd like for you to go to YouTube and search for Talk Law Radio and look for the Lady Justice and the red, white, and blue logo and click subscribe. And then you can get a notification when new videos are posted, and then you can learn more about the law, because I want to help you discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. So before we start talking about immigration, I want to just give a disclaimer, because we don't want people to feel like they're getting legal advice about what they should or should not do. This is just general information. If you have questions about your immigration status, you need to see your own personal attorney, because your facts and circumstances are unique. Okay, there's another disclaimer that I was going to give about talking about a show that people get all upset about. This is a controversial issue, right? And Shannon may say some things that are going to make you upset. Just don't say or write anything nasty on social media. Is that fair?
It's a good request.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to be talking about temporary protected status. What does that mean? That's an immigration rule or regulation, right?
Correct. There are certain countries that can be designated to have TPS status. From an immigration practitioner's perspective, this is great, because there's relatively speaking, there are limited ways an attorney can help someone if they don't have documents. And so this opens up a huge other area where somebody who doesn't have status here can legally apply. And that kind of touches on a basic misunderstanding I feel like most people have about the immigration system. I don't know if you've heard this before, but people will say, well, why don't they just apply? Why don't they do it legally?
Right.
You must be a criminal because you're deliberately flouting our immigration laws. Let them get in line and wait just like everybody else.
Right.
But a little surface understanding of immigration will show you pretty quickly there's no line. There's tiny little programs, and if you fit into one of these, you can apply. And I've never in all my years met an immigrant that has a way to apply that doesn't immediately rush over, put cash in under their mattress to save up. This is a very valuable thing. To have the right to live and work here legally is a very valuable thing that there isn't really an immigrant that wants to be undocumented. It has been my experience. So TPS is a great other program that's opened up for people that if you're from those designated countries, you're pretty much going to get TPS unless, part of the screening process, you don't qualify. Like if you have severe felonies or a criminal conviction, terrorist activity, obviously.
So some of the countries that I've heard have temporary protected status are Venezuela,
correct,
Haiti, Ethiopia.
Right.
And so is that like asylum, or is that considered to be asylum, or is asylum different?
What a great question. It's similar and different. And so one of the big differences would be that TPS is never going to allow you a pathway to have a green card. For most undocumented people, the green card is the holy grail. That's the goal. They want that and eventually citizenship.
That's resident status.
Right, the legal permanent resident, the the card, the green card. And then if you have that for 5 years or 3 years, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, you can qualify for citizenship. Once you qualify for citizenship, you can apply for your family. Like if you're here and you're from another country, you're probably also thinking about your people back in your home country. You probably have your mom's probably there. You know, you'd love to be able to
Yeah.
help people. If you left, obviously you want to get your loved ones out too. TPS will never allow you that.
So they will have to return to those countries?
It is temporary. It is designed to be temporary, and if your country improves, then TPS can be halted. And there are huge, I shouldn't say huge, but there are pockets of people in our country that fall into that category, and panic will ensue if there's even a hint that they're going to be ending TPS for their country, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then people are just scrambling. They already have established lives here. You know, they've bought houses. Some people have been here 10 years plus. So it will never be permanent. It won't lead to a green card, but often people get rooted here, and then it would be catastrophic for their lives personally if it were to end.
So the majority of immigrants coming through the border now are all asylum seekers then?
Well, it would depend on what country they would be from.
But isn't that what they're claiming?
I would think so, right. But if they have an understanding of TPS and they're from the protected countries, then they will use TPS instead, most likely.
Yeah. Okay. And so it could be that those construction workers that fell off of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore either had TPS or asylum or something. What are the other ways that they could get a work permit?
I could make some big guesses, but I would really be guessing. For example, if you told me they were from Mexico, I could use what I know to make some presumptions about whether they had asylum, whether they had TPS. Well, obviously Mexico's not protected by TPS. If they were from, let's say, Mexico, a way they could have a work permit would be if they were married to a U.S. citizen and had applied, and if their process was pending. So that would be a pretty slim chance, right, that all of them were married to a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
The employer, whoever had hired them, could have used like an H-1B type of program to legally ask for foreign workers. The problem with that, and the reason that I think that's a low probability, is because you have to prove that there's an American that, please forgive me, I misspoke. There's not an American that would be able to do that job. To my knowledge, and the standard is very high. So they would have to have skills that you just absolutely could not find here in the U.S. And so I couldn't believe that there wasn't an American that would not be able to do their jobs.
Yeah. I've heard there are some in the entertainment industry that get their right to work that way.
Correct.
Because of their talent.
Right.
Or maybe they're in sports.
Exactly. A scientist that, has several degrees, and he's the only one that, discovered this interesting new cool science thing.
Yeah.
But it's really, really hard to qualify. And I get a lot of calls in my office for that. Somebody who has their nanny maybe, and they love their nanny. They want to get legal documents for this person, like a housekeeper. She's part of the family, and there's just no legal way to do that.
Okay.
An American can do that job.
Right. I was just going to look up these statistics here about the construction workers on that bridge. This news report said the 6 workers who died in the Baltimore bridge disaster were construction workers filling potholes overnight on the bridge. They were from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. So do you know any specifics about Honduras, Guatemala, or El Salvador?
I think they would have been able to qualify for, they could definitely have asylum claims. if they were from those countries.
And can you get a work permit if you're on asylum?
You can very easily get a work permit if you're on asylum. And that's another kind of interesting little tidbit about immigration law that gets people in trouble sometimes. There are countries where you can apply for asylum, but it is so unlikely that your case will be granted that it's borderline unethical, fraudulent to go ahead and file that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But the immigrant, the undocumented client, they think you're Johnny Cochran, you got them, you paid them some money and they got you a work permit. That's what you wanted. But what you got on was this path to a deportation.
Oh.
So there were some scandals. I don't know if you recall, it's been a while, but there were some immigration attorneys that were making a lot of money because they had this ability to get someone a green card.
Mm-hmm.
Within 3 months, 6 months. I'm sorry, work permit. I don't know what's wrong with me, why I'm saying so many things incorrectly. They could quickly get a work permit. So they got a reputation in the community. Everybody flocked to them, paid them a ton of money. Well, it's a stack of cards that falls down,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Because eventually you get your hearing date and your asylum claim is not going to be granted. So they bought you a little time, but they put you on a path to automatic deportation.
Before somebody gets an attorney, like at the border, I've heard reports where now that they can file some asylum paperwork electronically on their phone.
Right.
They just show their phone that they've applied, right? Is that how it works?
Well, I don't know what happens at the border. I haven't been over there. But I do know that there's a new technology that they're asking people to use.
And so in that case, you have somebody that maybe doesn't even know what they're doing. They just know, I claimed asylum, and maybe it is a path to deportation.
Oh, I'm sure
on.
there's not a ton of correct legal knowledge going on the ground at the
Mm-hmm.
border. Yeah. I'll be blunt, Todd. My heart. I'm kind of like liberal minded and I love immigrants and I believe they make our country greater. I come from a family of immigrants, but I gotta confess to you, I don't know what's going on at the border. You're right. I see your conservative guests are correct in their alarm. I see these images
Mm-hmm.
and I have no comment on that. I don't know what's happening. It does appear that there's like a hole and that you can just see video of people just walking in.
But the people that you serve,
right,
they come to your office and they're already here.
Correct. I do a lot of family-based petitions. So U.S. citizens marrying someone that is from another country, so we can file I-130s and 485 packets and they can adjust their status here, or people that came in with a tourist visa and then if they need to adjust their status later. So
I'm glad you mentioned that because we're going to talk about the Supreme Court case where the guy was being deported because he came on a tourist visa, decided to stay, and then got in trouble for selling cocaine.
Right.
We'll talk about that after the break.
Okay, good.
But another issue with these construction workers in Baltimore that's brought up from some people in the news is that there's some percentage of construction workers that are all from somewhere else. And so they're saying there's not enough Americans working construction to fill the need of the construction industry. So I don't know. Is that something that needs to be addressed? We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Supreme Court. Stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.